When you are looking for a new home, there are many things that you need to take into consideration. One of your major decisions will be whether to take a 30 or 15-year mortgage. Here giving us the scoop on the pros and cons of both options, it's Colin Evans from Evans Financial Group. Well, Colin, thank you for being here today. Let's go ahead and discuss the 30-year versus 15-year and then pros and cons.
Absolutely. Which one do you want to start with, 30 or 15?
Let's do 15.
15, all right.
Pros and cons.
We do. We've got pros and cons on both sides of the table. And pros being on 15, obviously, you're going to be done with that mortgage within 15 years. That would be amazing. It's another pro that's involved in that is that it's typically going to be a little bit like lower interest rate too as well. So you're paying less interest over that time frame that you will on a traditional 30-year.
Right.
Now we got to go into some cons on that one. Is that higher interest rate that that lower interest rate you're going to be paying, but you're going to be having a higher note because we've got it crammed from 30 years down into 15 years.
I mean, more than double, right? After you're talking about interest rate on top of that.
You've got, yes, quite a bit. And then we look into, how does is this going to put any constraints on lifestyle? It could be a little bit on budget deterrent or budget fixated of, hey, we have to kind of keep that on a little bit tighter schedule compared to on a 30. When we look into that 30-year time frame, we've got, those lower monthly payments comparing up into the 15. Now your interest rate is going to be, of course, a little bit higher because it is stretched out over time. You have a little bit slower equity buildup on that 30. But typically, one of the greatest things that we discuss in our world on the financial services side from comparing a 30 to a 15 is that is one of the few times that inflation actually works in your favor. And when we get asked all the time, what's the best option for me? It's going to be a 15 or a 30. About 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, is a 30 is going to fit just a little bit better. And what blows my mind is I remember one of the very first cases I saw was brand new in the industry in about 2002, somewhere around there. And there were some clientele I was visiting with. They were in about year 23 or 24 of their mortgage. So they had purchased their home in about 1980. I'm dating myself on that one. And when I looked at their house note of their mortgage, I said, oh my goodness, your mortgage it's like $265 a month. That's amazing. My apartment at the time, when I was finishing college was almost 4 times that number. But that's when it works out in your favor because you start looking at, say, the payment might be, high now, but in 15 years, is that same note going to be as tough and constraints on the pocketbook as it is? One of the reasons that we suggest typically a 30 over a 15 is, if you can afford to do either one, then take the funds that you would put aside for paying at 15 and do the 30 and use that somewhere else. That gives you the liquidity that's held on your side of the table as opposed to just in your house, because it's harder to pull funds out of your home if you need to do things, repairs, investments, what other things that you would like to do with it, as opposed to having everything tied up into a non-liquid source.
Yeah, which is crazy because I would think it was the opposite of being like, no, just throw money at it so you can pay it down.
You can, and that is a mindset, but typically we've seen too over a 15-year time frame, if people are taking care of things conservatively and they're putting that money even into a savings account or a low interest bearing, when they get to, oddly enough, when you get to a 15-year time frame, sometimes, believe it or not, you almost have enough to cover the difference of the remaining 15 years on your mortgage. However, you didn't. You have it in your own personal account as opposed to the lender's account, so they can go out and lend that again. So it does put that in control. And at that point in time are you really in debt? And what I mean by that is...
And house debt is considered good debt, right?
Absolutely. It absolutely is in your favor, and it is in good debt when you're looking at that. But are you really in debt at that point if, in year 15, I could write a check and pay off my mortgage or just leave it in my bank account? I'm comfortable on that direction.
I like that.
There are some creative ways about it, and it's tough right now because we're still in such a high interest rate economy, and we're looking for a couple rate cuts throughout this year from the feds, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Colin, for talking to us about 15 and 30-year mortgages. I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.